Before the gospel came to Ahuateno, a little village in the state of Veracruz, Mexico, we who lived there were living in total spiritual darkness, without any knowledge of God. We practiced all kinds of idolatry, witchcraft, spiritism, Satanism, Mariology, drunkenness, and many other evil practices. One could easily see that we lived in extreme poverty. Even if one did work and earn a salary, he would spend most of it to buy wine, beer, and other intoxicating beverages. We lived lives that were totally out of control. Therefore, because of this extreme poverty, we lived in houses made of bamboo, sheets of tin, straw, and they had dirt floors. We were totally isolated from other communities and in terrible poverty. When the gospel came, many people accepted the good news, including my wife and me.
When I was converted to Christ, I was genuinely converted. And it wasn't easy because we lived like animals. We didn't know God. We didn't know there was a God. I give thanks to God for getting to know Him because my life changed. God transformed me thanks to the fact that this pastor, Pastor Juan Manuel, came to our village. That was when I became God's child, and now I am serving Him together with my husband.
What Brother Juan Manuel Fernandez, Brother Victor Gonzalez, Brother Faustino Osorio, and many other brothers that I don't remember now have done and continue to do, having a good example to us. Also, other pastors that have come have all played important roles in guiding the desires of those of us who want to do God's work.
It was very difficult. Yes, brother, that's for sure. It was extremely difficult. We gathered together a small amount of personal funds, and then the Lord blessed that amount we could give. The little bit it was, but God multiplied it.
I was about 17, and everything was going great. Then my mother asked me, "Son, what happened to you? What did you do?" I told her, "Last night I went out over there and that man was preaching and I accepted Christ." Mom said, "Son, what have you done? You should not have done that. Your father is going to be mad." And it happened. My father got mad, threw me out of the house and ran me off. And he said, "If you're one of them, then you're not my son. You can leave." He gathered up my things, put them outside, and said, "Go, you're not my son."
Upon arriving in Ahuateno, I meet another man who is ready to sacrifice to receive a blessing from God. That was Brother Faustino Osorio, in whose home the Ahuateno church started. Brother Osorio became an example to everyone of what it means to follow God through his prayers, dedication to God, and tremendous commitment to the Lord. I turned to my wife and said, "What are we going to do?" We said that the first church who called us would be God's indication of where we would go to serve Him. But this church pays less than any church we are considering. My wife said, "We made that decision and we are going to stand by it." So we went to pastor the Ahuateno church despite the small salary.
Brother Jesus Navarro left us a great example of serving the Lord. His work style, his love for missions, his simplicity, all made a deep impression on us. Even though we didn't understand it all at the time, he personally selected people and discipled them. We saw his focus on people, even those in the jail. These actions create an interest in us to serving the Lord. His teaching wasn't only inside the church building, but also in homes, on the streets, and in the marketplace. He had a very wide vision, very wide. He went with us to the little villages of his community in this entire region.
Together with the leaders of the church, we formed an internal organization which had the desire of working to meet a goal, and that goal was 10 churches in 10 years. Perhaps it was an ambitious goal, and I believe many times we don't think in this way. I say ambitious in a good way. So we were all in agreement. We began to cooperate. We formed a group called 10 for 2010 and got it functioning, so that in the report of 2010, the 10 groups were already formed in operation and in part of the growing church.
When I got to Ahuateno, the purpose was to train leaders who could take the place of Brother Juan Manuel Fernandez and others of his church that had been visiting the town from such a long ways away. Our purpose was to train men who could preach the word and who could teach in such a way that this new church would grow. Our purpose was to follow what Paul had told Timothy, to train faithful men who would carry on the work beyond what Brother Juan Manuel and others had been able to do.
Very much of what I can say I know about Christianity, I owe to the classes that Brother Paul came to give us as he traveled to Ahuateno month after month. The lessons he taught were from a book called The Great Doctrines of the Bible. I remember them very well. We learned a lot and began to grow and teach others. Brother Paul's labor of coming and teaching us was not in vain. We are the product and fruit of what he taught us during his time with us.
The church has had some difficult times, but it still remains firm with the same desire to propagate the gospel. We simply have to obey the Lord. He tells us to preach, and we must do it. He tells us to evangelize, and we must do it. He said that the souls need to be saved. We have to do what the Lord says. This is His commandment, not mine, and it has made a difference everywhere it is obeyed.
I believe, brother, that also part of the reason things have gone well, at least at our church, the Door of Faith, is that we firmly believe everyone has a great need. I'm not referring to economic needs, but to spiritual needs and emotional needs that people are suffering. I'll walk in obedience, brethren. The Bible tells us to take care of needs. Let's do it. The Bible tells us to preach. Let's preach. The Bible tells us to visit orphans and widows. Let's do it. It's just obedience and nothing more.
Christ completely transformed many families, and this makes me happy. The gospel is complete. It changes not only the heart, but the lifestyle. And I am content to see this happen. I thank God for His grace and His mercy that reached us and caused many of us from this community to become His servants. Many pastors from this church are serving in different parts of Mexico. Some are working in ministries, others are studying, but they are all serving the Lord. And this gives me great joy. In my ministry there in Ahuateno for 10 years as a lay pastor, several men went on to become pastors.
What was begun by one man, because he was obedient to preach the gospel to every creature, has continued because that obedience that had been modeled was learned by others. From this church alone, 12 students have graduated from our seminary, and various churches and missions have been planted. The obedience of this one man has resulted in the growth of the kingdom in ways we cannot measure or even imagine.
Who can do it? Only God, if we obey Him. God prospers the ministry. We do what is possible, and God specializes in doing the impossible for us.
Brother, I trust God that what we have shared here will help others to obey Him. I really believe that if that pastor at that time had refused to come to Ahuateno, we would not be here.